Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning the order paper has some significant issues, including the borrowing of $500 million, the changing of the financial services sector, and an amendment to the Gaming Act. And all these significant issues, the order paper was given to us on Friday afternoon. Just want to make the point that these are significant issues which needed more consultation, particularly with the Gaming Act and the borrowing that we're doing this morning. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister gave a long story about the need for the redevelopment of Hewanorra Airport. That was never in question. That sermon was unnecessary. The issue is, why is a government burdening the taxpayers of the country with $100 million US in loan when they found the same arrangement that could have done the exact same thing and would have been completed or would have been at a high state of processing at this time? That is the question. And that's the fundamental question, Mr. Speaker. And this question comes in the light of the debt situation in this country. In the estimates of expenditure for 2018-2019, the government proposed that they would borrow $300 million to finance the budget, $67 million from external borrowing, and $233 million from T-bills and bonds. A total of $300 million. Since that time, the government has increased that spend by $514 million, meaning that the government has borrowed $814 million in one fiscal year. And I will break it down for you. $270 million for the airports, $135 million for roads, $24 million for sports, $13 million for Pomandu, $3 million for Wall-in-T Rocher, $54 million for health, and $16 million for Fresh Start to build a road in Miku that has not come to this parliament. These are the fundamental issues. $514 million of loans that did not come to the parliament in the original financing statement as shown in the estimate of revenue and expenditure. That is the fundamental issue, plus the $55 million for the banks, which is a normal thing. So you find a government that cried and made so many issues about borrowing, has come to borrow $514 million, which they did not put in the statement of estimates, making $814 million for the fiscal year ending 2019. But Mr. Speaker, that is not all. The government gave the impression that the loan was coming from the government of Taiwan. But to tell you, the loan is not from the government, is from the Export-Import Bank. I do not know what's the relationship between that and the government of Taiwan. I may be instructed. But the loan is done according to LIBOR. And the Prime Minister boasts about the interest rates as far as LIBOR is concerned. Mr. Speaker, the LIBOR rates are increasing. And I will tell you what is LIBOR and how the LIBOR rates have been increasing for the year 2018, and how such long-term loans of 20 years are not normally given on the LIBOR rates, because LIBOR increases. In 1989, LIBOR was 9.89%. So it's very possible, because we have no control over these factors, that the LIBOR rate may increase. And that is why such long-term loans are normally given at fixed rates. And when you go to the borrowing from the Bank of St. Lucia, you will see that the rate is 4.75%, which is the fixed rate. So the Prime Minister has made note, there's nothing that is so genius in negotiating a loan at LIBOR, because LIBOR rates fluctuate. LIBOR, in January, the LIBOR was 1.9. February, I'm talking about this year, it was 2%. March, it was 2.3%. April, 2.4%. June, 2.4%. July, 2.5%. August, 2.5%. September, 2.5%. October, 2.68%. And November, 2.68%. So LIBOR rates are increasing. So we do not know what will be the state of LIBOR or what will be the interest rate when the time comes for us to repay that loan. So we have nothing to boast about when we borrow on LIBOR rates, considering what's happening in the financial system now. But, Mr. Speaker, it's even more than that. 20-year loans are normally given at fixed rates. They've negotiated a 20-year loan at LIBOR, which makes it fluctuate over time. So I don't know what's the thinking, or why do we have a loan that the Prime Minister boasts is easy to repay back, easy. Life is so simple. You just put a tax and take a loan. That's how life is, very simple. That's what the Prime Minister is saying. Put a tax and pay a loan. But the IMF has warned the government that this borrowing is getting out of hand. But listen to what the government said to the IMF about the airport loan. They said to the IMF, this morning, the Prime Minister said that the debt to GDP ratio will increase. But listen to what he told the IMF. Page 5 of the IMF report. Listen to what he told the IMF. Public debts will increase only by the amount of the road network. The airport loan will be contracted by SLASPA, the Port and Airport Authority, a non-financial public corporation, and repaid within the proceeds of the Airport Development Tax per departing visitor levied as of January the 1st, 2018. But listen to what they said to the IMF. They said to the IMF, the public debt will not increase. But this morning, the Prime Minister comes and says the public debt will increase the debt to GDP ratio. I can make it a document to the House, page 5 of the IMF report. Why was it necessary for them to tell? You want to know the report? You really want to know it? Yeah, let me tell you. The date of the report is 2018 Article 4 consultation, June 2018, page 5. Said to the IMF that the public debt will not increase. But this morning, the Prime Minister comes here and says the public debt will increase. Further, in the IMF report, there are more than 6 occasions where the IMF has warned the government about the increase in the debt to GDP ratio. So that is why they found it convenient to say to them that the public debt will not increase. And it's included in that document. Mr. Speaker, the loan is not about revenue stream. It's about fiscal space. It's about capacity to borrow for future projects. It's about why do you crowd your debt to GDP ratio with $100 million in the first instance. Whereas you could get this exact same thing and do not increase your fiscal space. Where you found in motion a concessionary agreement that laid out all the factors as related to development of the airport. And I'm going to come to that later. But I want to also make the point that this government, they levied the airport development tax when they were in government in the last time. And they did not build the airport. They did not even start the airport. They did not even start the airport. They did not even start the airport, Mr. Speaker. And they did. They had the airport. But you know why? The douche bank said that because of A&M, they would not give the money. That is why you didn't start the airport. You had all the money. We're not talking about no dam. We're talking about the airport. Not dam. You were not talking about a dam. You won't put me over that. We're talking about the airport that you put on the children of taxpayers. $100 million US. When you could have got the same airport built as your friends in Jamaica did. And I'm going to go further with the Jamaica situation. Because you all believe you can come and see all these glorious things. And I'm going to tell you how the government of Jamaica built the Norman Manley Airport. They are redeveloping the Norman Manley Airport using the same PPP arrangement that you neglected to use. The question is, why?
I'll show you how to use money.
Any country, Mr. Speaker, can say they'll put a tax and take a loan. Any country in the world. The problem is the risk, the procurement. You are spending $100 million. There has not been one tender as to how you're going to spend that $100 million. Not one tender. I have not seen one tender as to how that $100 million US is going to be spent. Who are the contractors? Who are the contractors? Who are the subcontractors? How are you going to tender for the subcontractors? You spend $100 million. Who are going to be the subcontractors in these projects? Why didn't you start the airport when you collected the airport development tax when you're in government? Why didn't the douche bank decide not to give you the money because of A&M? These are the questions you must ask yourself. Because you made 100 phone calls. 100 phone calls.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you always speak through the chair. Don't speak directly.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, more than 100 phone calls were made to a firm called A&M to get the cabinet to give the contract to A&M. Cabinet gave the contract to A&M to build the airport, and the douche bank said no with the $100 million, with the money from the airport development tax. These are the questions you must ask yourself. These are the questions. You must ask yourself, why are you a process of a PPP that all airports in the world, including your friends in Jamaica, are doing the same thing, but you refuse to do it here? The Heathrow Airport in England is owned by a Nigerian. But you are borrowing money to build one when you could have got exactly the same thing done here without one extra cent on the national debt. And you'll allow yourself that space to borrow for the hospital, to borrow for schools, to borrow for roads, to borrow to do so many different things, and your airport will have continued to be constructed. Now, Mr. Speaker, you've heard many things about how this PPP arrangement was nonsense, we will get no money. I am going, Mr. Speaker, today to give you an analysis between the Norman Manley Airport PPP development and the Hewanorra Airport PPP development. And I'm going to come to ask you, why would a government that just intends to destroy an abattoir built by the government of Taiwan, they call it a slaughterhouse, why would this government not want to go this way, where they speak about best practice? They paid a firm $13 million to show them best practice. You have the best practice in airport development, but you're not going to do it, but you're going to spend $13 million to give a firm to teach you best practice. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about a loan of $100 million. Here is what this government found in place when they came into power for Hewanorra International Airport. Here is what they found in place. And if you allow me, Mr. Speaker, I will tell you what they found in place. Here's what they found in place, Mr. Speaker. They found in place, Mr. Speaker, the government of St. Lucia had spent $250 million. They got Canadian government financing through Global Affairs Canada, had provided a grant of $1.8 million to assist the government through the IFC so that they could deal with the issues relating to the airports. A grant of $1.8 million, and the government would have spent $250,000 US. Why did the government, that's not document, that's my notes. Yes, my notes. I know when the document. That's your business. I will tell you what they found in place. And I will compare it to what their friends in Jamaica did with the Norman Manley Airport. Their friends in Jamaica talk about best practice. I'll tell you what they did. And you see the difference. You will see, Mr. Speaker, some of the same firms that tendered for our airport tendered for the Jamaica situation. Some of the same firms. You have to ask yourself, why did the government delay a project for 2.5 years to go that way when everything was in place to go in a way that would not put any debt on the people of St. Lucia? I'll tell you what. The PAP arrangement structured a 30-year concession under which SLASPA and the government of St. Lucia would retain ownership and regulatory oversight of HIA. And they would be remunerated through concession fee revenue and corporate income tax paid by the private investor, estimated at $1 billion and EC $580 million undiscounted at the end of the 40-year concessionary arrangement. Look at what their friends in Jamaica did. Norman Manley International Airport. The owner would retain ownership of the airport's assets. The concession will be for 25 years with an option to extend for a 5-year period. That's what their friends in Jamaica did. That's what we had done for St. Lucia. Further, we would have got revenue over the period of $1 billion and income tax of $580 million with no risk on the government of St. Lucia. Absolutely no risk. Let me tell you what their friends, because they give people the impression that when we talk about a PPP, we're speaking about some scheme that never happened. But that is what their friends in Jamaica did. So we came back to St. Lucia. Back to St. Lucia, we'll compare the two. Because, we are tired of telling people things that are not based in any facts. We're just saying whatever you want. But I want anybody to tell me what I'm saying about the Norman Manley International Airport in Jamaica is untrue. Further, HIA. What would happen at the HIA? There would be a new terminal building. There would be runway and taxiways. There would be apron expansion, and there would be improved power station. A 30-year master plan was conducted, and a detailed due diligence structured and marketed the project internationally and commenced a competitive tender process under international best practices with the issuance of a request for qualifications and subsequently the issuance of a request for proposals. So the tendering process for the airport was international best practice. It wasn't somebody make a trip or somebody sit in a cabinet room and decide who is getting the contract. It was international best practice. And I'll go further to tell you how that international best practice was done. And let's compare it to what their friends did in Jamaica. In Jamaica, it was different. In Jamaica, it was handled by the Norman Manley, it was handled by the Airports Authority of Jamaica, the AAJ. But we went further. We didn't allow SLASPA to manage it. We allowed an international World Bank affiliate, the IFC, to handle it, which is different to what their friends in Jamaica did. So, in terms of procurement, it was best practice. Further, there was a cabinet had in its possession a final approval of a concession agreement. How was that concession agreement developed? It was developed by a team of specialized consultants, international and local legal counsel. The lawyers' name were Guy, Lauret, and Noel, and McNamara and Company of St. Lucia. The technical and engineering advisor was Advanced Logistics Group. The financial accounting advisor was some people the Prime Minister knows very well, Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young were the international financial advisor. So that means we had nothing to hide. Nothing to hide. No minister was involved in that. The public relations specialist was development communications consultants. And we had developed a public relations plan. And if they want, they can have a documented house. Because there wasn't anything done in secret. We developed a public relations plan, and they can make down a documented house if they want. A public, because that's a document, I won't read from it. There was a public relations plan for Hewanorra Airport. It was nothing done in the dark. Mr. Speaker, that is the plan, the public relations plan. So it was nothing done in the dark. Secondly, there was the public relations plan was not done by us, it was done by SLASPA, and we have it right here. You can see it if you want. Further, listen to how the depth of the contribution, you can laugh, because it's $270 million of taxpayers' money. You have to divide it. You have to divide it and look at your debt to GDP ratio, the debt that you put this country in. So you can laugh. You can laugh. You put in, and if you want to talk about debt, I can say to you, who created debt in St. Lucia? We have the analysis of who borrowed more in St. Lucia for what. So if you want to go this way, we can go this way. But let's get Hewanorra, because the government just says things. They just say things without any fact. And any time you tell them about fact, they divert and they throw mud. Fact. We're going to talk about debt if you want to know about debt. Official debt. We're going to talk about debt. A teaser.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Leader of the Opposition. Honorable members, allow the Leader of the Opposition to make his presentation in silence, please.
Mr. Speaker, they are ashamed. So when you are ashamed, you have to divert. But you will not put me off. I'm talking about the money that you're borrowing. The $814 million you borrowed in 1 year. That's what I'm talking about. Don't divert. We're not talking about anything else. You're not going to put us off. The people of St. Lucia will not get taken off by that. We talk about the money that you're borrowing. That's what we're talking about. Mr. Speaker, during that process for the airport, 55 potential investors at the end of August 2014 expressed interest in that airport development. 55 people, including locals, regional people, and international people. Out of the 55, 14 expressed interest. Following that teaser, SLASPA and its advisor attended the Global Airport Development Conference in November 2014 and the Airports Council International World Bank Aviation Symposium in February 2015 to promote HIA as an investment opportunity. We went to the World Forum to promote HIA as an investment opportunity in the World Forum. There were 6 one-on-one meetings were held with interested investors to discuss the transaction and to understand their perspectives and potential interests. And these visits were done by SLASPO officials. There was no cabinet minister in that setup. The cabinet was not, no minister was involved in these visits, only SLASPO officials. There was no minister involved. For the 40-year concession, the investment program for the 40-year concession was estimated as follows: $118 million in new capital investments and US $90 million in maintenance investment, making a total of US $208 million. That was the overall 30-year plan for the airports. 118 million US and capital investments of, and 118 million US in capital investment and 90 million in maintenance investment, make a total of $208 million. This document says $100 million. Under the concessionary contract, the private investors required to complete the military construction works totaling $87 million within 30 months of the start of the concession, and the private investor will be solely responsible for any cost overruns or construction delays for the benefit of the government of St. Lucia. The concession contract requires the private investor to post a completion bond to compensate the government of St. Lucia for any delays or violations of performance requirements. So that means we had tied the private investor into a tight contract with a performance bond so that they could have no cost overruns or delays in construction. That is what they found. That's what they found. What are the financial implications of that PUP arrangement, Mr. Speaker? Listen carefully, because you know, you will hear the flashing mirrors. You will get nothing, give the fellas everything. You'll hear this, you'll hear these statements, completely unfounded and basically not factual. Listen to the financial implications of that deal. The concessionaire will collect and remit monthly to SLASPA all passenger security charges and navigation and communication charges. These 2 charges are for the direct use and benefit of SLASPA and the government of St. Lucia. The amount of these charges is at the discretion of the government in line with the SLASPA Act. So when they tell you they would have given up all the revenue to the concessionaire, that's not what the concessionary agreement said. That's not what it said. We would not have given up all the revenue. What will the concessionaire get? The concessionaire will also collect, receive, and retain all the remaining fees and charges, excluding the 2 charges mentioned above during the concessionary period. The amount of these charges is set in line with the regulatory mechanism in the concessionary agreement and is reviewed and approved by SLASPA. What cabinet had to do, cabinet had to set what these charges would be in agreement and in discussion with the concessionaire. Now, the issue, Mr. Speaker, is that the government would have avoided the risk and the dangers of procurement. Because, you know, the Prime Minister spoke to the press and said to the press, he will form a committee to look into, the Prime Minister said to the press, he would form a committee to look into the allegations of the procurement problems that related to the HIA. Note my words carefully. The Prime Minister said to the press that he would form a committee to look into the allegations surrounding HIA when the 110 phone calls were made one day and the Miami Herald said this and there was something and there was something, you said so outside there. You said you would form a committee. You see, you look at yourself, get what you say, stop too much. You said that you would have formed the committee when the allegations were made that there were 150 phone calls between A&M and ministers in your cabinet. You said you'd have formed a committee to look into these allegations. Up to this day, we have not heard what that committee was about, or whether that committee was ever formed. Now, there are other issues as they relate to Hewanorra International Airport. There is an issue relating to VAT. Will the contractor have to pay VAT? That's something that was up for discussion when we were talking to the concessionaire, or whether you are going to allow them to pay VAT. So you may have to come back here to deal with the VAT issues. But VAT is a major issue as it relates to that major capital investment. So, Mr. Speaker, you will see that there was due diligence and proper transaction structuring for that airport. What do we have instead? What we have instead is that the government completely in the boardroom of a cabinet and other places are coming to the public of St. Lucia and saying to them, we are borrowing $100 million US. And the answer to them is we have a revenue stream. That's so simple. The same revenue stream they spoke about for the roads. I want to ask the Minister of Finance, is he collecting $1.50 for the gas tax that he said the money go into a lockbox? Yes. How much are you collecting? Yes. And if you say you are collecting $1.50, I'm saying to you, you are not saying the exact truth as it relates to 150. If you're collecting it, what you did is you restructured it. You put a 250 one place and you put it to 150 instead of 250. You can't be collecting $4 on the Ghana gas. I can bet you're not collecting it, you're not collecting it. And you know you're not collecting it. You are not collecting $4 of Ghana gas. But you're not collecting it. So the 150 you said you will collect and put in a lockbox that never lock or open. That 150 you said you would put in that lockbox. You can't put it there because you're not collecting it. You understand? And you haven't said to the public of St. Lucia the $6.80.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order.
What's the point of order?
No,
Mr. Leader of the Opposition, he stood on his feet and indicated that he's standing on a point of order. Please have a seat, sir.
Mr. Speaker,
Honorable members, please.
The Honorable Leader of the Opposition, the member from Castries, is imputing things. We have made the point over and over again. We are collecting
What's the point of order?
The $1.50, Mr. Speaker.
What's the point of order, Mr. Speaker?
Leave Mr. Speaker of the Mr. Leader of the Opposition. Allow the Prime Minister to make let the Prime Minister make the position clear to me, and then I will rule if there is a point of order or not. Honorable Prime Minister, start the vote again, sir.
Mr. Speaker, the honorable member is misleading the House. There is a $4 intention to collect a $4 tax. We have indicated at all times that we're lockboxing the $1.50. If in fact the government cannot collect the $4, okay, it is coming out of the $2.50. I have made that point repeatedly, but we've said that we have secured the $1.50 because the $1.50 is what's going towards paying the loan, and we are a responsible government in meeting our commitments to the loan. So for his clarification, we are securing the $1.50 if in fact the excise tax is insufficient to be able to collect the $4 when we are reducing the amount for the $2.50 and we're taking the hit on our recurrent revenue.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, the Prime Minister is indicating that the $1.50 is in fact being collected and it is going into a lockbox.
Yes.
That you have indicated that he's not collecting that amount, and he has indicated to you that you are misleading the House. So he's indicating to you that he is in fact collecting that $1.50. So just be so guided, sir. Continue, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is creative.
Yes.
The point is, when the 150 was imposed, there was already 250. The intention was to collect $4. And if you look in the estimates, you will see the revenue projections are done at $4. And the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance is not collecting $4. That's the point. Because the revenue estimates tell you, these estimates show $4 per gallon, and they are not collecting $4 because they are afraid of the political ramifications of increasing the price of fuel. So even though he's collecting the 150, he's not collecting the $4 revenue that they projected to collect in the estimates. So I'm not misleading anybody.
That's what he said initially.
You are not collecting the $4 from.
Honorable members, Leader of the Opposition, continue, sir, continue.
Mr. Speaker, the due diligence work that was included in the transaction for the airport. Not any secret deals, not any sitting where nobody knows, and you come to a pub and tell them you want to buy $100 million, and you give a big libera about something everybody knows about congestion on the airport and flights leave at 1 o'clock. Everybody knows that. That's not a fundamental point of issue. We have no problems with redevelopment of the airport. No problem. You have no issues with that. That's not the issue. You didn't do it yourself either. You collected the money, you didn't do it. Because the douchebag said no, because of A&M. So you collected money too. Don't mislead the House. You collected money for the airport development tax. And your government did not bill the airport the same way. So don't make people believe the automatic thing, just collect money and you'll bill the airport. That's not automatic. Cabinet.
Continue, Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, there was adequate due diligence. There was adequate due diligence in all factors as they related to the Hewanorra Development Airport. This included technical works, legal and contractual matters, auditing of accounts, preparing the most effective communication strategy, I showed you there, and building a financial model to analyze the economics of the transaction. That was done in one document. Has the public of St. Lucia been told what was the thinking, apart from the fact that there's a revenue stream? A revenue stream now, I'll tell you something, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about this revenue stream. The revenue stream, they say, comes from visitors to the airport. No problem in that. What about, God forbid, wouldn't like that to happen. If there's a hurricane and visitors no longer come to St. Lucia for a period of time, what is left that revenue stream? Who is left to pay that loan? Have you made any conditions in the agreement with the export or import bank for that eventuality? But if your loan, if you didn't have a loan, and if you had a private sector handling that, that would not have been your issue. That is what your friends in Jamaica did.
I know you know better than what you tell the people of St. Lucia. That's why they have trust.
Mr. Speaker, yes, the tender process was launched on July the 7th, 2015, through the issuance of a request for qualifications, which set out the timetable for the bidding process and the pre-qualification criteria for the screening of investors. The request for qualifications was advertised in local and international newspapers to attract broad interest. I want to ask this Honorable House, what advertisement has been displayed in any local or international newspaper or journal for the contractors to build that new airport? That's the question. I'm imputing no motives. I'm asking a question. Was there any tender process to choose these contractors? The submission deadline for proposals was July 31st, 2015, but was moved to September 7th in response to requests from investors. Now, when that document was put in the public domain, in the national domain, there were three international firms that bidded to build this airport. Vinci, a consortium of Vinci Airports and Vinci Concessions, SAS. Vinci is a French company that fully owns Vinci Airports and Vinci Concessions. Vinci Airports operate 24 airport facilities in Portugal, Cambodia, and France. On April 1st, 2016, Vinci acquired 2 other airports in Japan, making the company one of the world's top 5 airport operators. Vinci Concessions is an infrastructure developer that designs, builds, and finances infrastructure in sectors including airports, road, mass transit, and parking. That was one of the firms that tendered for St. Lucia's Airport. The other firm is Sedicor. Sedicor is a Uruguayan company whose principal business is to make investments in airports and airport-related businesses globally. Through its subsidiary corporation, America SE, incorporated in Argentina, Sedicor controls airports in Argentina and operates 30 airports in Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, Armenia, and Italy. That was another firm that was interested in the Hewanorra International Airport. That's another firm. Another firm, ASUR Highstar. ASUR Highstar is a consortium, and it's a New York Stock Exchange-traded Mexican airport management firm that operates 9 airports in Mexico. Highstar Capital is a New York-based infrastructure investment firm that has made $7.8 million in equity investments to date. In the Caribbean, ASUR operates the Cancun International Airport, and together with Highstar, the Luis Munoz Marine International Airport in San Juan and Puerto Rico. That firm also tendered to the Hewanorra International Airport. That firm also tendered. Look at what your friends in Jamaica did. Your friends in Jamaica. Look at the people who tendered for the Norman Manley Airport. In Jamaica, listen to the people. The request for our proposals was issued in June last year. The entities pre-qualified to submit bids were Vinci Airport, the same Vinci Airport here. They tendered for the airport in Jamaica. Sedicor SA, the same Sedicor SA, they tendered for the airport in Jamaica also. And 5 other firms which tendered for it but didn't tender for St. Lucia. So when you hear as if what we had was some piss-patch foolishness that it took the bright UDP government to disrupt because what we had was nonsense. These are the facts. These are the facts as they relate to the airports. And I'm going to go further. The key draft documents for the tender process were issued on December 8th. So these 3 firms agreed that they were ready to tender for the concessionary agreement to build our airports. A draft concessionary agreement that outlined in detail all the responsibilities of SLASPER, GeoSL and the concessionary, as well as all the required technical annexes describing the capital investments expected from the private investor and the minimum operating standards. That was in a document, and the draft of the concession agreement was supposed to be finalized so that the tenders could have bidded the final bid after they answered all the questions in May 2016. In May 2016, that arrangement would have been completed with these firms.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, please be advised you have 15 minutes in which to complete your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, significant investment had been made by these investors, by these free developers, significant investments. They had conducted due diligence, they had prepared bids, the bidders had submitted 200 due diligence questions to SLASPA. In arrangement, they say it was nonsense. They say what you're doing was foolishness. They're bright, they're going to squash it and borrow $200 million. These three major investment, major firms had submitted 200 due diligence questions to SLASPA. And SLASPA had provided 8 sets of responses to address these questions. The bidders' questions were extensive and sought to clarify the understanding of the current status of the facilities at the HIA, the recent operational performance of the airport, certain contractual obligations, and the concessionaire would inherit the nature of traffic demand and operating costs among issues. That was where this government found the Hewanorra International Airport when they came to the government in June 2016. That is where they found the airport. And as I said previously, in the Norman Lanley International Airport, almost word to word is the same agreement that was done in the Norman Manley International Airport. But the government of Jamaica, in their wisdom, chose to continue on this path, even if they were not the ones who started it. Because the first airport was under PEP, under the other government. But in their wisdom, they choose to continue. But we here, we have to ask ourselves, with all that controversy that was surrounding Hewanorra International Airport, why would this government, instead of borrowing the money to complete St. Jude's Hospital, or instead of borrowing the money to set up the OKE Hospital, why would this government want to squash this agreement? An agreement which, by the end of 2016 or early 2017, work on the airport would have started and would have been completed in 30 months because of a bond that was set up as part of the concession agreement. Mr. Speaker, the people of St. Lucia, in spite of all the flashing mirrors and the diversions and the digressions that they will hear in the response, these are the questions that they must answer. What is the fundamental reason? What was wrong with that agreement as compared to your friends in Jamaica? Why did the Jamaica government, that according to the IMF, is reducing its debt to GDP ratio as compared to you, that you're increasing your debt to GDP ratio, why would the Jamaica government want to go with a PPP, but you in St. Lucia, after you've been warned that you're going to be 81% in debt to GDP ratio by the year 2023, why would you still want to borrow when you had an arrangement that would give you an airport without borrowing? That is the fundamental question. That is the fundamental question. The question is, with all that controversy, all these issues surrounding Hewanorra, why is the government hell-bent on borrowing money? And on borrowing money, we've come to this Honorable House with a request to borrow money. We have no details. We do not know how you'll choose the subcontractors. We know nothing. All we know is you're asking the taxpayers of St. Lucia and you're hiding under the umbrella of you have a revenue stream. If life was so easy, there would have been absolutely no problems in the world. All you do, you would just tax, have a revenue stream, and borrow. And to do that, you misled the IMF, and you said to them that it would not affect your public debt. You misled them on page 5 of the IMF report, where you said that this loan from SLASPA would not increase your national debt. Mr. Speaker, the opposition will not support this loan. Not because we have any issues with the people who are giving us the loan. We have issues with the way the government is going around this process. And we are saying to the people who are giving us this loan to examine carefully the procurement processes as they relate to that loan. examine carefully who is going to be getting the contract to do what. Examine carefully how these subcontractors will be chosen. We are saying to them that there should be open tender for each of these contractors, because history has shown that this Hewanorra airport has been controversy, mad, thank you, comrade, has been mad with controversy. So we are saying you have to be very careful, because what you hear is not what the reality is. Finally, I want to say to you, Mr. Speaker, that why would the Jamaica government, where the debt to GDP ratio is reducing according to the IMF, would go with a PPP, and you, whereas yours is increasing, would go with a loan, and you would seek to mislead the IMF with telling them that it would not be part of the loan. Mr. Speaker, we will not support this. We will not support this loan, and I'm calling on the people of St. Lucia, when the time comes, to show their disgust with this recklessness and this carelessness of this government, borrowing $200 million when it could be avoided, and that money could be used for a different purpose. We are not going to be supporting this loan, Mr. Speaker, because we think it's not in the best interest of St. Lucia, even though we believe that the airport ought to be redeveloped. We are not going to be supporting this loan. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.